Hello and welcome back to the United Devils podcast. We've got some fantastic Manchester United analysis to bring this day of all days, really. When we thought we were going to be really upset and have to see Ronaldo in a blue shirt, we get to see him in a red one, or as early as the home game against Newcastle, if reports are to be deemed true. He should be making his second debut against Newcastle next week. Will obviously not be ready for Wolves on Sunday, which we will get onto later. But with me is Joe, who you're going to be at Old Trafford for what looks to be Ronaldo's second debut. I mean, you must be thrilled to see him play in a red shirt again.
Oh yeah, no, I'm absolutely buzzing, Arjun. From a United fans' perspective, it is absolutely incredible to see him coming home. It feels like we've been linked with him every summer since he left for Real Madrid. It just feels that way. I think he said to have a couple of years at Real Madrid, and then ever since then, there's been whispers of him coming back, and finally it's real. A lot of people may say, from a footballing perspective, it's maybe a few years too late, but look, if you can't get excited about this signing, and then, like I just said to your camera, I'm not sure how long you've been supporting United. It's absolutely incredible to have one of our own coming back. It's going to be a fitting end to what's been a fabulous career as well. Only imagine if he can just help take United back to sort of the levels that they were when he was here last time. And then what a way to finish his career, what a way to cement a legacy, and just going back to being at the game. Yeah, it'll be absolutely wild at Old Trafford. I mean, I was there for the Leeds game on the first game of the season, and the unveiling of Varane, that's the loudest I've heard Old Trafford for a long time. So, the fans were rightly gassed about that, but I think this one's just going to be another level. So, when we see him come out on the pitch, I even think the game against Wolves at the weekend, with the amazing away crowd that we have, I'd imagine that's going to be a pretty hectic and loud atmosphere, and there'll be plenty of Ronaldo songs coming on Sunday, even though he'll be nowhere near Manchester and nowhere near Wolves.
So I think we might have lost you just for a little bit. Do you mind just repeating just when you got to Varane? Sorry.
Yeah, so obviously I went to the I'm just saying I went to the United game against Leeds. Absolutely amazing atmosphere when we unveiled Varane. I've not heard noise in that at Old Trafford for a long time. So you imagine what that was like. And when Ronaldo eventually does make his first appearance at Old Trafford, it's just going to be going up a notch from that. And like I said just then, I think even the game against Wolves this weekend, even though Cristiano's going to be nowhere near Manchester, even nowhere near Wolves, I still imagine that to be, a lot of Ronaldo songs on Sunday afternoon, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when we were trying to think of, not 6 hours, maybe even 6-7 hours ago, trying to think of a way to remove him from the Bruno chant, try and put Rojo in at some point. I saw some things on social media, but it's a massive turnaround from what we were expecting to happen. I think it was something that we weren't expecting him to join United, and obviously there was that little presser from Ollie. I think it was this morning, which was sort of, well, let's see what happens. He knows we're here, kind of thing, and that was. I'd only seen it. I mean, I was out, and then I sort of came back, looked at my phone, 5:00. We've signed Ronaldo. Where has this come from? It was. I mean, it was just such a shock, and I think it's just only going to improve. What was it? I mean, I think a lot of people were disappointed from last Sunday, just the way that United drew that game. It almost felt like a lot of people thought they'd lost. It was sort of that kind of negativity around. And I think the fact is that when people don't play, we're used to playing twice a week last year, basically played twice a week last year for every game week bar one. So I think when there's no football to be played, a lot of people were sort of letting what happened on Sunday sort of fester a little bit and overthink about it and take it a lot more than what it was, which was a point in the first, 4 points from the first two games, which obviously isn't great, but it's something. It's not the end of the world. And so I think this is something that can be kind of quite uplifting. I agree. I think it will bring a bigger noise coming into the Wolves game. It will bring a massive noise at Old Trafford next Sunday, or the Sunday after next, I think it is. But it's a huge morale booster. It's a very smart business decision as well from that side, because you think about the amount of money that United, I think they lost 150 million during the COVID period, and I think that will automatically get brought back. I've even got a little message saying to renew my membership, so they're being very smart about this all. So, I think it will be a huge signing, both on and off the pitch. You can even look at Mason Greenwood and Anthony Martial, and just you have that mentality Ronaldo has. You have Cavani, who works tirelessly, and if you don't get sort of inspired by both of those two players, I mean, that's pretty much it. I think Greenwood is going to be phenomenally lucky to have two fantastic players to look to and a fantastic striker coach in Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. So I think he's going to be set for life, really. And I think it will only improve Martial, or it will make or break him, really, I think. So, and I hope it makes him, but we'll have to see. We'll move on from Ronaldo now, because I'm sure there'll be so much to talk about in the next few weeks.
Just to say quickly, to back up what you were saying about the impact on maybe the impact he has off the field. When the rumour broke this morning after Solskjaer's press conference, the club was the value of the club had gone up by £128 million on the stock market. By the time we're doing this show now, I just saw a tweet regarding United's sale price, and they reckon it's up 300 million from what it was last night. So, I mean, if anyone wants to sort of doubt the impact that this deal has, like, off the pitch, and not only from Manchester United's point of view, but the brand of Cristiano Ronaldo, the CR7 brand, he's gonna ride on the coattails of this as well, and himself and his brand will do very well out of it. So, just to back up what you were saying, as much as it's a massive deal on the pitch, it's a huge deal off the pitch, and yeah, great. I'm just looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think as well. I think he sort of. It's also a little bit that Juventus wanted money for him because they're financially unstable, and I think he sort of realised that Juventus are going through a little bit of a crisis themselves. I think that's another thing. I mean, you think about Juventus right now. Obviously, they've got a great manager come in. They've got a really, really strong defence, but I think there's a lot of issues with the finances at Juventus, similar to Barcelona. Not at the same level, of course. We can't even begin to imagine things at the same level of Barcelona's financial crisis, but it is something similar, and I think that they need to get wages and money off the books. I think what they've said is it's 15 million euros up front with 8 million in add-ons, which will all but guarantee we'll almost guarantee 5 million in add-ons based on what seems to be quite easy to achieve. And it will, it's not a lot of money for Cristiano Ronaldo. £20 million. It's not a lot when you think we bought him for 17 million all those years ago. And
the price,
wages again, they're not as astronomical as we were expecting.
The price is very similar, Arjun, to the price we paid for him when he came to us in 2004, which is quite spooky, really, and it makes you think to yourself, is that a good deal or is it a bad deal? But someone who's 5 Ballon d'Ors down the line from when we brought him in, and God knows all the achievements that he's had in his career, but also he is 36, and and obviously you think about what 17 million pounds was in 2004 compared to what 17 million pounds is now. I mean, 17 million pounds in 2004 was about half of the world record transfer fee, or probably a quarter of the world transfer record fee. It's nowhere near that kind of number now. So it's interesting, and everything's coming back together, and it's just a perfect storm. And I think the perfect ending to his career from his point of view and from Manchester United.
Absolutely. And I think it's sort of the idea of coming home and being received so warmly. I think it will be huge for everyone involved. And what I will say now is that, like you said, we talked before the podcast, there were, obviously you got to fall in love with this deal, but there are obviously some things that we do need to talk about. The fact is that it does look quite certain now that unless sales from the club go to other clubs, that United won't be getting a defensive midfielder, which I think they did probably need more than Ronaldo. Obviously,
Yeah.
the kind of the love of football, I mean, it obviously takes over in that sort of circumstance. When Ronaldo wants to leave, you take Ronaldo. But they do need a midfielder, perhaps, if they are to get through. However, there is the other option that because Varane is actually a bit more of a better defender than Lindelof is. No disrespect to Lindelof, of course, but maybe it might steady the ship and not need that kind of defensive midfielder, and maybe it would allow what we have at the moment to work functionally at least. But I mean, what's your take on that? Would you say the United still need to try and force a midfielder into the club, or do you think this is it, done and dusted? You're quite happy with what we've got so far?
No, I think I've said all along. I think the CDM it's a priority position this season. I thought you could maybe have said even ahead of a centre back, and we needed a centre back. Make no mistake about it, we did need a centre back. I'm not knocking the that, and I'm glad we got Varane, another world class player. But I would have argued that midfield, it needed additions. But the only thing that does happen now with bringing in Varane is where if we'd have been going into the season with Maguire and Lindelof again, you'd have maybe said that CDM player needed to be, an actual central defensive midfielder in terms of tough tackling, can break up play, can sit in front of the defence to defend. Ollie's still going to play the same formation. I think he's still going to play that double pivot. He's still going to play two. What you might get away with now, though, in that position is having someone that's a bit more of a, I think they call him a trequarista or something, is it? I'm not really down with the terminology. I'm not down with the kids, but somebody who can just pick up the ball and almost be a conductor in that position rather than necessarily a tough tackling player that looks to break up the play, like someone like a Declan Rice or somebody like that. So I think what that has done this summer is it's meant that it's probably given United more options in terms of targets. I think that's why you're seeing them being linked with people like Ruben Neves, because you don't look at Ruben Neves and think he's a player that's actually, although he can break up play and he plays that position for Wolves, he's all about getting on the ball and his wide range of passing and getting that ball forward, getting it into the playmakers in the team. Same with the likes of someone like Saul Niguez, who was another name that we've been linked with. Not necessarily a defensive midfielder that's going to be crashing into tackles, but somebody who's confident to receive the ball from the defence and play those simple 5 to 10 yard passes into a Paul Pogba or a Bruno Fernandes. And I think that by signing Varane, we've almost opened our options for that central midfield position. We're no longer looking for it to just be a sort of Matic replacement or someone who plays the game like a McTominay and Fred. We're looking for somebody who can actually be more of an influence on the game moving forward. And I think that's the good thing about what we've done with Varane, because we don't need two. We don't need a McFred pivot. We don't need two that are just going to sit there. We need the second one to actually be a bit more progressive. And that's why I've been excited about an addition in midfield. Because, I thought to myself, we're going to see somebody come into that position who's really, really good on the ball, but it just hasn't happened. And I am a little bit worried that it might not happen before the end of the window, but I wouldn't discount it altogether. I think there are deals to be done out there. The Saul Niguez deal, I have no inside information, but what I do know about that deal is that I think it's not the hardest deal to do initially, because we're talking about a loan. So we can get that done, and then the cost of that and the commitment of that gets pushed down the road till next season. So that's the one really that I'm surprised United aren't pulling the trigger on right now, Saul, and especially given the chances that Kieran Trippier may have to still come to the club if we do let Dalot go. I think Trippier and Sowell have the same agents as well. They're under the same agency, so I do feel that that's a double deal that United could do. But I also think it's a double deal they might still do. I've not ruled it out altogether, but in answer to your question, yes, I'd still think we need a midfielder just to finish off this window.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think one thing we can talk about with Sowell is that, I mean, he's not really been noticed as much in the last few seasons. While Atletico have been fantastic. He won the league. He played 33 matches in that league, in that title. Atletico. I think that he's one of those players that has now become kind of unnoticed, which is almost perfect for United. We don't need the player that's sort of, it's not always necessary to be the player that's noticed. I mean, you think about Michael Carrick being probably one of the most underrated midfielders in Premier League history, and you think that's the player we need to replace. We've been needing to replace since he retired in 2018, and I think the thing is that Sowell could probably do a very good job there. The question is, does he want to come? Chelsea are also interested, and the obligation to buy of £40 million, will it be worth it? Will it be over the top based on his performances? Because if you have an obligation, it means you have to buy him, and even if he plays horrendously. So, there is a lot of things going on there. I mean, my personal choice would be Camavinga, because I just think he's one for the future. But however, he's such a great talent. He can play anywhere in the midfield. He's very versatile. He's quick. He's smart. He's a clever footballer. He loves a tackle, and he's got 20 years ahead of him. So it's just whether he's interested in the club, and obviously there's PSG still interested too. And then the third person on the list is obviously Ruben Neves, who I'm a big fan of, but again, not sure whether he fits our system. Not sure whether he's the right person for £42 million, which is what has been reported by I think it was Samuel Luckhurst earlier yesterday. So I don't know whether that's going to happen. I could see it being either of the three. I could see it being none of them. But I think you're right. I think we do need another midfielder. But whether that happens in January, I could definitely see happening. I think it will happen in one of the two windows. I don't think they're going to leave Ollie high and dry with that midfield, especially with McTominay being ruled out for the Wolves game. And that's going to be an interesting one for our predicted lineups, who's going to be playing, because I think for certain that midfield should not be playing the one that played against Southampton. That absolutely shouldn't happen.
No.
But we'll move on. We'll move on to Southampton just briefly, because obviously, we haven't actually talked about Leeds either, because we didn't do one last week. But I mean, obviously you were there. Fantastic game. Unfortunately, I was only sat watching it on my phone in a hotel room. But it was, I mean, obviously an amazing game. Have the fans back. You could just feel the difference on a phone screen. I can only imagine what it was like in Old Trafford. But nothing short of sensational, I imagine.
No, really special for me personally, and I don't think I'm alone. Very emotional as well. I won't make no bones about it. When I saw the players walking out the tunnel, I was sort of teared up and emotional full up. But I think you've seen it over the first couple of weeks of the Premier League. Now everybody in the league has played a home game. I think for a lot of teams, it's been quite nice, because I think a lot of people, and I even say United, as much as we wanted to get off to a good start, and as much as it was Leeds United, I do feel like teams have almost said this first home game back, let's just enjoy it. It's been 18 months without a crowd. They're back. Let's make sure that, not that the result doesn't matter, but I think it took some pressure off the players, just knowing that today, that day was literally all about the fans, and you could see that with the way that United had tailored the day. There was a lot going on outside of the ground, interactive stuff for people coming to the ground. Once we got inside the ground, I mean, it was a surprise to me seeing Varane unveiled, because I hadn't had a chance to check Twitter and see everybody, seeing people like Samuel Luckhurst tweeting saying, oh, United are actually planning to announce Varane before the game. So, that was all tailored for the fans as well. And even after the game, I don't know whether you noticed, but there was a little lap of honour from the players, which was, I'm not sure they would have done if they hadn't have won 5-1, but, nevertheless, they did still walk around the pitch and applaud all the fans. So I think for everybody now, in these first couple of weeks, the first home game for all the clubs, they've all tried to tailor around the fans just to basically say, look, we've missed you. We're glad to have you back. Let's start. The season started now. We've got this first couple of games out of the way. We're at Wolves at the weekend. And, I expect teams to start getting their focus in now and start looking a bit sharper. I think, it was disappointing against Southampton last week, but that can happen in these early games. I think it was quite obvious what happened to United against Southampton. They sort of got to 70 minutes and they hit a wall, and that can happen to teams physically in the early games of the season, because during pre-season, especially when it's another interrupted one like United did, you're never really quite sure where you're at fitness-wise until about 3, 4, 5 games into the season. So I think, although I was disappointed, it was definitely 2 points dropped. United should have beat Southampton, which I'm sure we'll talk about after. I wasn't surprised to see that can happen to any team. And, at the end of the day, it was a point where maybe that's the kind of game in the last couple of seasons we'd have lost. And let's not forget that the start we had last season at this point, after 2 games, we're already 3 points up on that, and playing much better as well than what we were this time last year.
Sorry, I think I lost you just for a second. Would you mind just going back to 2 points dropped, please?
Yeah, just sort of like just saying that obviously, 2 points dropped, and that's the kind of game that we might have lost last season, unfortunately, and in previous seasons. But it's 4 points from the first 2 games. If you look at that compared to how we did last season, I think we're already 3 points up, and we were just about to get beat 6-2 to Spurs, I think, weren't we, this weekend? So 6-1, sorry, to Spurs. So it's already a lot better, and I feel like the performance levels there, everything was there with the performance against Southampton. The ball just didn't go in the back of the net, and like I said, unfortunately, it just tailed off physically at the end, which can happen in those first sort of 3, 4, 5 games of the season.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think Ollie said something similar. Like we actually had more chances against Southampton than we did against Leeds. The ball just didn't get in the net, and mix of poor finishing and a bit of bad luck with the post and the and the goalkeeper and Salisu being apparently a wall for some reason. It was just not to be. But it was definitely a disappointing match, and I think a lot of things that were an issue, like we said, were the fact that the midfield, I think I saw it, they gave the ball away 32 times in the game, something like that, 32, 36 times. And I think Fred was 22 of them. So, I mean, that it is unfortunate, because I do like Fred as a football player. I think he's an excellent option for United. I think he's a great presser. He's great on the counter, and his work rate is phenomenal. And I think him and McTominay work fantastically. It's just when Matic dropped into what was basically a back 3, and then Fred was left on his own in the midfield, he kind of gave the ball away so often that it wasn't even funny at any point. It was just sort of expecting Fred to pass. I mean, the pass to Wan-Bissaka where he just threw it off the pitch basically was, I mean, it just sort of summed up his game. It just really wasn't his night. Obviously, I think Fred and McTominay work well as a pair. Fred had a fantastic campaign for Brazil alongside Casemiro, who's arguably one of the best defensive midfielders around right now. So with McTominay injured, Matic obviously, he played well in pre-season, really well in pre-season, but his legs did seem to go against Southampton. And Fred, clearly not the same player that was playing alongside McTominay. I mean, some people have begun to suggest that even though Solskjaer sees Van der Beek as an attacking midfielder, he could now be rethought of as in the pivot. I mean, we'll start with this point now. For Wolves, something has to change. If so, and if you agree with that, what should change in that midfield?
Yeah, I think the issue that you have when you play Matic nowadays, as well as he's done, is that what you find with Matic now is that he drops so deep in that double pivot, like you said, because he almost makes us into a back three. And the reason he does that is because he's wary that he hasn't got the pace anymore. He hasn't, and that's why he drops off and gives himself those extra yards. And that's why it's a problem for United, because then, like you say, you're essentially playing a back three and with Fred as your only sort of sitting midfielder. I think this is where I think you're absolutely spot on with Donny. There's been a lot of talk, obviously, in the off season, and a lot of talk in pre-season that he's done a lot of bulking up and that he's become a little bit more positionally aware in terms of what Solskjaer wants from him when he's going to play in this team, i.e. playing in a double pivot. And I think this is where we're going to see it actually, whether he can, because the issue United have got here is they're not going to sign anyone. We know that obviously McTominay is out for the next sort of month or two. If they don't bring anybody in, you have a player in Matic who cannot play, I don't think, twice a week anymore. I just don't think he can do it. And, we're going to be starting the Champions League campaign as well in a month or so's time. So Donny's going to have to be able to play that double pivot. He's just going to have to, because I look around this squad, you hear rumours of someone like, could Victor Lindelof play as a CDM? I'm not really down for that. I don't think that works. That doesn't work at all for me. And then what are your other options? I mean, is this how Phil Jones resurrects his career? I remember him having a few games at CDM under Louis van Gaal, didn't they? I mean, but it's become a real problem, and it's almost as if people don't get the urgency. I don't see why we aren't looking at that midfield, even without McTominay's injury, and saying, we need something there. But I think for Wolves, obviously nothing's going to come in before then, so you just have to forget talking about who could come in and who couldn't. I think it probably will be Donny, and I think if you think back to the game at the end of last season, I think it was the very last game of the season, we played Wolves at Wolves. I know that was a very different game. United made tons of changes, and obviously Wolves, it was last game, seeing nothing on them for that. But Donny played very well in that game. And amongst some of the others, obviously, I remember Ahmad had a good game that day. Alanga obviously scored and had a good game. So I can expect, I think it'd be a good game to bring Donny in, just because, it's quite fresh in his mind that he's had a good game there recently, and it'll be an ideal opportunity for Ollie to see actually whether the work that he's done over the summer means that he can be an option for us there going into the season.
Yeah, and actually, he and Matic played in that pivot in that match. And although what I will say is that the one thing that changed from that game was that Adama came off injured after about 20 minutes. I think that was
that makes
a big factor in that, obviously. And obviously, yeah. And I think no Raul Jimenez either, obviously, was a big... it's a massive setback for Wolves for the whole season, really, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not the same team without him, really. I think they would have struggled. My prediction would have been, had Man City gone for Kane, that Nuno would have absolutely put 60 million on the table for Raul Jimenez and got him at Spurs, because then, and I think then Wolves would have really, really struggled. But, it's great to have him back in football, because he is a phenomenal striker, I think. He's a really underrated player.
Great player.
And he's going to cause us some problems. But I think if the right players are put in the right positions, I think they'll do just fine, i.e. Varane and Maguire. No disrespect again to Lindelof, but I think he'd struggle against Jimenez.
Yeah.
No, I agree. I think Donny should play, and I think it will be... I don't know who it's going to be with, but, I mean, honestly, I could see it either Fred or Matic. honestly couldn't tell you which one, but I mean, we'll get to that in a bit. Before we move on, obviously, to that preview, we'll just quickly look at something that happened yesterday. Obviously, the Euro. I almost said Europa League, and I really wish I hadn't.
Easy.
But
Not yet,
the UEFA
not yet,
Champions
not
League
yet, not
draws,
yet. Maybe later on. Maybe
not yet. I've got too used to it. It's actually kind of depressing. But the UEFA Champions League group have been drawn. And honestly, we could have had such a difficult group. And we've got probably the second least difficult group, to put it nicely. Villarreal, who obviously we can get revenge for that Europa League final. Atalanta, who, while they show lots of promise, did get demolished by Liverpool and Real Madrid over 2 group stage games and a knockout round, respectively. And Young Boys, who we played in our 2018-19 group stage and won 3-0 away and 1-0 at home. And on the flip side, Manchester City seemed to have run out of money because they didn't bribe anyone for their group stage, because they got pretty much as difficult a group as we did last year. They got exactly PSG, who are better than they were last year, RB Leipzig, and Club Brugge. So, not the easiest group for them, and certainly could pose a couple of problems should they go into the season without a striker or an actual left back, as it seems. But I mean, what do you rate the English team's chances of getting through the group stages?
Well, in terms of getting through the group stages, I think the English clubs will be fine. I think the only one who obviously could be at risk if they're not on it and they do struggle. It is Man City. I know, as ridiculous as it sounds, because obviously they did. They got to the final last year. But you got to look at PSG there with the improvements that they've made. It's close between them and City to be who's favourites to win that group. But then, as we saw last season, you can never sort of underestimate Leipzig. I mean, I haven't seen a lot of Leipzig sort of post Nagelsmann, but it was a very strange game. I think we beat them 5-0 at Old Trafford, and then obviously in that infamous game at the end of the group stage, we went there and lost 3-2, didn't we? So and a very sort of frustrating time for us. Leipzig are dangerous. They've obviously lost a couple of players, as they always will, but I think they have a good manager there. I think it was a guy who used to be at Salzburg, wasn't it, who's done great things there, and obviously had a big part to play in developing people like Minamino and Haaland at their time at Salzburg. So, I think Man City are probably the most at risk, because it's one of those groups you expect them to come out of it, but if they're just slightly off it, if they're 90%, they will struggle. From a United's point of view, United fans' point of view, I'm very happy with our group, although we can probably mark down after 2 games against Villarreal, we'll probably have 2 points, considering we played them 4 times. And every time it's finished 0-0, so that's probably 4 points dropped from those 2 games. So, but I think when you look at the other teams, the Young Boys, Atalanta are a very, if you followed Serie A in the last couple of years, you'll realise they're a very good team. But like a lot of teams like Atalanta, when they've done well and they've achieved above their means, that team eventually gets broken up when they don't quite go to the next level, and they have lost a couple of players. Obviously, they've lost their centre-back they had in Christian Romero. He's gone to Tottenham this summer, and I think one of their strikers could potentially go to, is it Duvan Zapata? I think could potentially go to Inter Milan, although I'm not quite sure what will happen there. So Atalanta,
I think they've signed somebody else.
Oh, okay.
They might have signed somebody else, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, so Atalanta will be a banana skin for United. They're a good side, but if United aren't winning that group, then I'd be quite disappointed. Not only should qualify for me, but I think they should win the group as well.
Well, just to add on to our record signing, has got 13 goals and 5 assists in 15 games against Villarreal in La Liga. So, who knows? He might be the lucky charm that day.
The missing piece, yeah.
Well, those 2 games when we play them, so you never know. But he's got all that in his locker. So I mean, I remember when we had that. Obviously, Cavani has had a fantastic record against Roma and got, what was it, 4 goals, 2 assists in 2 games against them. So you never know, we might break that curse there and then. But I do fancy our chances, and like we said, we could have had Bayern Munich, we could have had Ajax, we could have had AC Milan. Liverpool have got a pretty tough group actually, with all things considered, Porto, AC, and Atletico. It's not going to be an easy run for them. Chelsea have got Juventus, who, I mean, they could fail, they could soar without Ronaldo. It's really going to go one way or the other. But they're not going to be they're not going to be easy. I mean, Dybala's a fantastic player. Chiesa lit the Euro 2020 fire. So they have got some phenomenal players there. So that could be a big problem for Chelsea.
I mean, aside,
I can't for the life of me. But
sorry, I just saying, like, you look around Europe at the moment, and the sort of top clubs, the Real Madrid, the Barcelona, these teams, Juventus, who you associate with getting to latter stages, you can't help but think that, like last year, the latter stages will be dominated with the English clubs. I think the English clubs are by far, the strongest teams left in the that are in the competition. And I wouldn't even be surprised if 3 of the 4 semi-finalists, for example, are English, like it was back in sort of the late noughties. And we sort of the year before, I think we had the 2 finalists in the Champions League, 2 finalists in Europa League, didn't we? So yeah, I think I don't see any. I mean, Real Madrid maybe bringing in Kylian Mbappe, and that will make them stronger. And he's quite capable of taking someone like Real Madrid and helping them win it. But I do actually think that it'll be the English clubs dominating by the time we get to the latter stages again, like last year.
Yeah, and what I think is that's always been sort of what I've thought. But also, you got to think about PSG have almost got this onus on them. Aaron and I have talked about this a couple of times on the podcast, but they almost have this onus that they have to win the Champions League with the team they've just built. Even without Mbappe, you've got Messi, Di Maria, Neymar. You've brought in Wijnaldum. Jinxing it already. Brought in Wijnaldum. They've got Verratti, Sergio Ramos, Hakimi. They've brought in a super team, so they almost have an onus to win that Champions League. But whether they can do it, they might even have a struggle in the group stage. You never know. Could be Man City that dumped them out, like we could have done last year had things gone our way. But you never know how it could be. It could be a very, very fickle, and it's going to be a fantastic European Champions League, UEFA Champions League, sorry. And it's going to be one that I think, there aren't really now there's no outstanding candidate.
No, I think you're right, Arjun. I think you're right. I think PSG are going to be there, I think, but you look at, Chelsea haven't got any weaker. Man City, they're going to be looking to take that one final step. I think Liverpool are going to be naturally better than they were last season. Obviously with Van Dijk coming back, we're still to see whether they add maybe one more to their squad before the end of the winter. You certainly look at the early signs of someone like Liverpool, they certainly look a lot better than they did last season already. So, yeah, I think like you say, PSG are probably going to be one of the favourites to win it, if not the favourites. But when I talk about the latter stages, I think of those semi-final stages, and I could quite easily see 3 other teams with PSG in the final 4, if you know what I mean. And I think that's what I'm sort of getting at when I say, obviously, that it'll be a strong English contingent in the latter stages. Whether an English team wins it or not is obviously another story, because I'll be honest with you, like you said there, you touched on there, with the investment PSG have made this summer, I'd be very disappointed if they're not getting over the line with or without Mbappe, to be honest, because I think if Mbappe goes, I still see someone coming in there this summer. I don't see PSG being the type of team that's just going to let 150 million pound burn in their back pocket. I could see them going and getting a Lewandowski or trying to do something like that towards the end of the window, and they'll bring somebody in. That's for sure. There's no doubt about it. You're on mute, mate.
Oh, sorry. I think we lost you again. Sorry. Would you mind just repeating that last bit? Sorry.
I said that obviously, with PSG getting rid of Mbappe, they're not. I don't think they're going to allow that 150 million just to sort of burn away in their back pocket. I wouldn't be surprised if they go and spend some of that and maybe try and bring a Lewandowski to the club, or do something before deadline day's over. Because as much as obviously it's brilliant that they brought Messi in, I think the idea what they had initially was they would be Messi, Neymar, and Mbappe, and it's looking more and more likely that Mbappe will go to Real Madrid. So I do think, to cushion that blow, I do think they will look to invest some of that Mbappe money and bring in a striker this season rather than wait a year. PSG aren't the type of club that wait to do their deals. If they want something, they go out and get it.
Yeah, and I think one thing is that they were looking at Haaland, because obviously the money that they'll get from Mbappe would cost the release clause Haaland currently has, which is 150 million euros. But obviously his release clause is even less than halved to 65 next summer, it seems. So that's something that obviously would be hugely considered. They might say, well, we'll get ahead. We've got all this money. We might as well use it on a player that's going to be hugely sought after next season. Certainly by Manchester United too. But there's Lewandowski, like you said, who said he wants a new challenge. There's Lautaro Martinez, who could move. There's Aguero, who will probably want to dip out of Barcelona as soon as possible, given the fact that he tried to join because of Messi. But I think there's plenty of permutation to happen. I mean, PSG might say, forget it. Well, let's just get Suarez and get the band back together or something like that. I don't know, but I think, I agree. I don't think they'll sort of leave it there and then. I think that's a big thing. Is that I think that's why Camavinga's probably not going to be going. He's probably going to be going to because they'll obviously have the money now to fund a transfer. But we will move on swiftly to Wolves, and we won't talk a lot about it because obviously, there's still haven't really seen a lot of this Wolves side. It's obviously a new Wolves side under a new manager. It seems more attacking than the last Wolves side. I'll say that much, but they're still playing with the back five. But they haven't won a game yet. They've lost 3 in a row, including their last friendly or preseason match. They lost 2 games, 1-0 to Leicester and to Tottenham. We actually did the double against Wolves last season. We haven't lost a game against Wolves since 2019. However, we did draw twice to them the season before last. But we did win both our games by just a single goal last season. So it is going to be, I can only expect a tight game because that's how Wolves do tend to play. But they have got some weaknesses. They have got some issues with their fullbacks. I still don't think Marcel, Semedo, or Johnny is ready to. I don't think Johnny's ready to play. I don't think Marcel or Semedo are anything special. I mean, we saw how Semedo got completely done a couple times by Mbappe playing for Barcelona, and Davies playing for Barcelona, and Mbappe again in the Euros. So he's not going to be too much of an issue, I think, for our forwards. The one thing is that can we break a team down that sits back like Wolves did, like Wolves tend to do, like Southampton did when they put Bednarek on. It will just be whether United can switch on. If they can get a couple quick goals, then that changes the whole dynamic of the game. If they can keep Adama Traore and Jimenez quiet, that will change the whole thing. But who do you put in that team? You obviously should make changes from the Southampton game. Like you said, we also said we were going to talk about the midfield. Obviously, Donny van de Beek, you said you'd like to see in that midfield. How many changes would you make for that match?
Yeah, just on Wolves quickly, it's going to be interesting to see how we go. I mean, obviously, the Wolves games that we've had, obviously, and there seems to have been plenty of them in the last sort of 2 or 3 years. They've all been Nuno's Wolves, and obviously this season we have, Wolves have a different manager, and I can't profess to saying that I've seen a lot of Wolves in the sort of pre-season and in these first couple of games of the season. Although from what I gather from that Spurs game, which was Nuno managing Spurs this time, that it was very much, it looked like it was Nuno versus Nuno, and the only thing that separated the teams was a 1-0. So I'm probably not expecting Wolves to play too much differently to what we've expected in the past. I think that would be the best way to approach it. So yeah, like you, I think it will be a tight game. We need to be seeing sort of on team selection. Sorry, quickly, we need to be seeing Varane. I think Varane needs to start this weekend, and I think Sancho the same. You can kind of understand to an extent what Ollie's done with the new signings. He's not wanted to rush them in too quickly. He's looked at the nature of the opponents that we've had, and I think he thought he could maybe get away with using some of last season's players, but sort of got a bit caught out, obviously, a bit towards the end last week in Southampton. So I'm expecting to see these new players playing now, because Ollie's going to come under a bit of pressure if once again we don't see Varane and Sancho, especially when you look at Jack Grealish has not long since signed for Man City and he's already starting for them, and you've got Romelu Lukaku, I think, had joined about a week previously and then played against Arsenal and scored last weekend. So yeah, we need to see as new guys. And then, like I said to you earlier, I do think Donny should come into the midfield. I won't say will, because every indication is that Ollie doesn't usually start him, but I think Donny should come into the midfield. And yeah, I mean, I'm happy with the aspects of the team. Like I said, bring the 2 new signings in. Sancho probably replaces Martial, who I thought was a bit of a passenger against Southampton, and he needs to get up to speed, but we can't really afford to let him do that during games, because we're missing out on points. I think Martial let too much of that Southampton game pass him by, really, and I think if it had been a bit more on his game, he might have been able to help us get that extra goal we needed in the end.
I think the thing is, I think everyone thinks that Sancho will come in, and I don't doubt that. I think he'll probably start on that right-hand side, which is where he'll tend to develop. Well, he'll tend to be, because of Rashford obviously being more of a left winger. I could see him starting to form a relationship with Wan-Bissaka. Obviously, he played a pass to Wan-Bissaka, who popped in that cross for Bruno's header that was a little bit too weak for to get a decent chance at the goal. But it's developing a good relationship, and it'll only help Wan-Bissaka. So I think he'll start on that right-hand side. Greenwood was phenomenal up front. He was just very complete, dropping deep, playing passes, coming in. The one thing that he lacked was probably that header that he probably should have scored. But other than that, it was another complete performance from him. Pogba on that left is becoming a bit of a demon. He created so many chances in that Southampton match, and including the goal. Again, Bruno, you can't drop him at this point. There's no chance. And I don't know whether it will be Donny and Fred or Donny and Matic, but I do hope it will be Donny in that midfield. It is a big question mark, because obviously Wolves do like to press, but then they also have the counter-attack. So it's whether you want to counter-press with Fred, or you want to sit back with Matic and prevent yourself from being counter-attacked. But I think the fact is that if Varane starts, you have less of a concern. So I'd like to see Van der Beek and Fred, because I think they could probably put out a good performance together. But it's just, obviously, I think it'll be up to Ollie's what he sees in training, and what he sees who works best together, who complements each other better. Because obviously we've seen Matic and Van der Beek a few times last season. We saw Van der Beek and Fred against Besiktas, where it was a little bit cagey at points, but I mean, obviously United won 4-1. But we also saw Van der Beek, Fred, and Matic all together against Southampton in that 3-2, and that was a little bit non-existent at points. But yeah, I don't know how it will line up realistically, that midfield pivot. I mean, I would say is I'd like to see it be Van der Beek and Fred, just because you have that energy, you have the press, you have a little bit of you got a good sense on the ball with Donny van der Beek, who I think is a lot more confident. He's bulked up, he's got a bit stronger. I think he'll be perfect for that Wolves game, and it will be an interesting match, regardless of who plays in that midfield, just who gets the better, because obviously it's going to be Neves, Moutinho, and maybe Dendoncker in there too, so who are solid players, so they'll have to do their utmost. But yeah, like you said, Varane has to start for me. Shaw, Maguire, Varane, Wan-Bissaka, and David De Gea, who was probably kept us in that match against Southampton a couple times. So, you know, I'm glad to see him playing at his best form, and I hope it continues, but we'll see how the season continues. It goes on, really, with Henderson going to come back being hungry and ready to retake that spot. Now, for your all-important prediction, I mean, do you see United winning at Molineux? Of course, we've barely even thought of the fact that a win or a draw would break the record for the all-time unbeaten away record that was set by the Invincibles. So that's something to also consider. Do you see United getting 3 points on Sunday?
Yeah, I do actually. Yeah, I think like you said, I think it could be tight. I've always thought in all the games against Wolves, even, you know, all these games played against Wolves, I just wish we could score early against them. I've always thought all those games would be different games if we could just get an early goal. So I've often thought Wolves are one of those teams that we could beat a lot more comfortably if we made life easier for ourselves by scoring early, because I think that changes the way that they want to play, then it changes their approach, and ultimately that creates a bit more space for United. I think we saw it, albeit, like I said earlier, with two very different teams. We saw United score first, I think, in the game last season, at the end of the season, and I think they're not early, but, you know, early-ish, you know, early for a sort of United Wolves game. And I think you saw the difference in how the game went then. You know, it sort of opened up a bit more for United. They weren't quite able to capitalise because, like I said, they'd made a lot of changes, a lot of young players playing. But I think the key to playing this Wolves side is to try and score early and go from there. Like you said, maybe capitalise on some of the absentees they've got at the back as well. You know, unfortunately for them, you know, they are missing a few players. So if we can sort of, our strength is obviously going forward and our front line. So if we can get at their back line, yeah, I just see this being a good match for United. And, you know, going back to what we're saying at the start of the show, you know, I think there must be a massive positive feeling amongst the players, the squad at the moment with this news coming out today. And hopefully, you know, they'll take that on the pitch for them. They'll be very happy about this news. You know, there's a lot of rumours going around that the players were quite unhappy about the thought of Ronaldo going to City. So, you know, it's the opposite feeling like that now. Maybe like us as fans 24 hours ago, we were ready to start watching football forever. Now we can't wait for the next game. And I'm sure that the players have been on a very sort of similar emotional roller coaster, and I'm expecting a good performance from them on Sunday.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think they'll be really up for the game. I think, you know, if you get that early goal, like you say, it changes the whole dynamic of how Wolves play. I think especially this new Wolves that will try and chase the game. I mean, obviously they've only conceded 2 goals this season, but I think from what I can't say I've watched the games, but it looks like they could have easily scored a couple, but they could have easily conceded a few more too. So I think it could be quite an interesting match, especially when they're now desperate for points and obviously hoping not to extend their negative goal difference. Sorry, I don't think. What score would you say you'd give for the match?
Sorry, yeah, no, I didn't give you. I'm gonna go for a 3-1. I think United have got the goals in them. I've got a funny feeling they might score early-ish, and when I say early, I do mean maybe first 20 minutes. I think they may get a goal, and then I could see them. Yeah. You know, I could see Wolves maybe equalising, United going back in front, and then maybe getting another one late on. You know, as Wolves try and chase that game. I think that's the sort of way I can see the game going. So, which is pretty similar to how I saw Southampton going. I wasn't surprised when South sort of Southampton actually scored first, but I wouldn't have been surprised if United had scored first in that game. Southampton pulled it back. Because the thing with United now as well is I'm not 100% sure about this, so forgive me if I'm wrong, but I think they haven't kept a clean sheet in the last 10 games. So I think it's always a pretty safe bet to sort of maybe assume that they may, 10 Premier League games, it's probably a safe bet to always assume that they may ship one somewhere along the line.
Yeah. No, I think so. I think, well, hopefully it would be almost poetic if Varane came in and the United kept a clean sheet, but it would be nice, and I think it would be a big. I do see it being an open game because I think Wolves will try and get going and United will want to react too. I could, like you say, early goal is a safe bet for me. Obviously, the tradition of United playing away from home in the last 18 months is go a goal behind in the first half, go a goal down during the first half, and then react in the second half and score 2 or 3 and get the win. But obviously, you have that away crowd, you have the home.
Yeah.
Sorry, got a bit of an internet fault. Can you hear me? Oh, no.
Sorry, mate, I lost you there.
Sorry, yeah, I think my internet just got a bit faulty, but are we all good?
Yeah, all good, mate. Yeah.
All right, sorry about that. So I'm just saying that they'll try and get the away crowds up, and they'll do that by being aggressive, having high intensity, and try and get an early goal. And I think they will, because I think this Wolves side is still not quite ready, not quite settled in, and I could see it being a comfortable game if United take the chances they will make for themselves, because I do expect them to make chances. So I'm going to go 3-0 because I do see it being a clean sheet. With Varane coming in, I think he'll just sort of neutralise that threat that they have down the channels with Adama and Trincao, who I think are good. Adama's a fantastic player. Trincão's a good talent, but I can definitely see them being neutralised by United if they are focused. Which I'm going to go 3-0. It's certainly, like you say, an exciting point for United right now. There's still 4 days of the transfer window, just in case we do get a couple of signings that we want. But we'll have to see with that. Obviously, Ronaldo taking a big chunk out. I expect it will be only if exits can be found for the likes of Lingard or Phil Jones or perhaps somebody else who we're not quite sure of that might come out the blue.
Just on transfers quickly. I don't want to obviously come on here and claim to be in the know, but I have a close friend who's very close to one who works at Marca in Spain, which are obviously the Madrid-based newspaper, and they're saying that tonight we are deep in negotiations for Kieran Trippier. So I think that is a deal that's probably moving forward. I know there's been a lot of talk today about Diogo Dalot maybe going to Dortmund or maybe on the move after all. So I'm not quite sure what to make of that, but I think obviously if this is true about Trippier and Trippier comes in, then obviously that means Dalot will make way. If Dalot is going, I am pretty confident that United will look to bring someone like Trippier in, because they've allowed Brandon Williams obviously to go out on loan to Norwich. They've allowed Ethan Laird to go to Swansea on loan, so they'd be leaving themselves really short if they were allowing Dalot to go and not looking to bring someone in, even though Wan-Bissaka seems to be able to play every game. Obviously you can't risk that because you just never know with injuries and stuff. And also just quickly on on transfers, the same guy who's sort of involved at Marca has basically just said that Saul basically wants his preferences to come to United, but he's literally waiting for United to say, no, we're actually not going to do that deal. And then if that's the case, he will agree to join Chelsea. But until he knows for sure that United don't want this deal, he'll probably he's going to wait.
Ooh.
Can you hear me?
Sorry, I lost you there after you said Saul. Could you, report what you said about Saul? It's very interesting about Trippier that they're still in negotiations.
Yeah,
it's fantastic that they're still in talks.
Yeah, sorry. And then obviously just on Saul, I was just saying quickly that the idea with Saul is that I think his preference is to come to United, but he's waiting to see whether that's something that United want to do maybe up until deadline day. If United decide that they don't want to pursue it, then he will probably then sign for Chelsea. But right now, I think this is the reason it's not been done with Chelsea already, is because he actually prefers to come to United. But United are probably telling him that they're not quite sure whether it's something that they want to do yet. And that makes sense now, obviously, knowing that there may have been something in the pipeline with Ronaldo the last week or so.
Sorry, Joe, I lost you again. But I think the message was that Saul is waiting for United to respond because he'd rather go there than Chelsea, and that's why the Chelsea deal's not done. But obviously, United need to make funds available because they've just signed Ronaldo, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So.
Okay. Well, yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean that would be sort of a sensational turn of events. That not only would United get some of the most fantastic players around, that they also get every single position that they needed addressing all in one window. I mean, that would almost be I'd say a miracle, but it should be what we expect from a United transfer window, because we're Manchester United. But it hasn't happened in the last 7 years, unsurprisingly. So, that would be something that would be sensational if they managed to do that. But we'll have to see. 4 days, but stranger things have happened. We'll have to look at the look at Fabrizio's wall and see what comes up. But I'm afraid that is all we have time for this week. Thank you for listening, and thanks for joining me, Joe. It's a pleasure talking to you as always. And hopefully you have a fantastic time at the Newcastle game. It should be electric.
Perfect. Yeah, no, really, yeah, absolutely. Gassed to be there. I can only imagine, and Newcastle of all teams as well, because off the top of my head, I distinctly remember Ronaldo. I think used to enjoy playing against Newcastle. I can remember, I think at least one hat trick that he scored against Newcastle, and I think a couple of braces as well. So yeah, of all the teams, Newcastle will be thinking, why us?
Yeah, I'm putting him right in my fantasy football team as well.
I don't blame him.
Yeah. But until then, if you have any questions or any topics you'd like for us to discuss on the next podcast, comment on the live chat. And if you enjoyed this, please like this video, subscribe.